What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Fight Club. I'm here with Ian. We got him over here. His car seems to be functional, so that's awesome. Got him back over for a full show tonight. Real quickly, let's go over the rules. Rule 1, talk about Fight Club. Rule 2, pick your battles, know your shit. Rule 3, know your opponent. Rule 4, keep the debate on topic. Rule 5, admit when you're wrong. So tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to keep it more casual. Tonight we're just going to kind of chat about a couple of things. First thing, we're going to talk about Khanna's Stop Cheaters Act, which is awesome. It's really good legislation that he introduced back on the 18th, and it has to do with closing tax loopholes and tax havens outside the U.S., and it's supposed to raise a bunch of money. It doesn't cost a whole lot, which is really cool. We're going to talk about, I read an awesome article by Chris Hedges that was published by Mint Press News recently that talked about how a significant portion of the Capitol rioters had financial trouble, and particularly financial trouble recently, which is an interesting development and kind of goes along with what we were talking about, that we thought that, the riot wouldn't have been such a big thing had the people in the United States gotten a stimulus check or two or monthly. I don't think so many people would have showed up if they weren't destitute at the time. And then we're going to talk about Bernie withholding his vote for Tom Vilsack for Secretary of Agriculture. And that's important because Tom Vilsack has already been Secretary of Agriculture before. He did a terrible job, and we're going to go into the details on that. So, and then we're going to get a little bit personal. We're just going to talk about each other, we don't know each other that well. Ian and I were new friends, and I don't know him more than about the 10 visits that we've had together and what you've seen of us on the show. We really just met, so we're going to get to know each other, and I'm going to ask him some questions personally. He's going to ask me some questions, and we're just going to chat for this last quarter of the show probably. So let's talk first about the... first, is there anything you'd like to riff about that I've been talking about in particular over the last couple of weeks?
The last show, when you mentioned the pick for the USPS fleet trucks.
Louis DeJoy, yeah.
Yeah. So you have for the new vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I did some. Now I try not to get too conspiratorial, but it's hard not to when so much of the stuff, it's always layers under layers. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Biden's all there.
I agree.
But I think he's there enough to make decisions that will either make him money or set his family up and that kind of thing. And so what I do know is that Workhorse, which was the company that was going to be doing electric vehicles, and they were the best bidder, basically.
Yes.
And he decided to go to Oshkosh, even though it's going to cost more money. It's not going to be green, and it's going to take longer to get the vehicles. And so that decision really didn't make too much sense to me, and I understand that it's a defensive contractor, and they want more money, and I'm sure they donated to his campaign like a lot of defense companies do, because he's pretty hawkish.
Safe to assume.
Yeah. But he could have given them any other contracts. So what I think happened was, you and I probably both know that Tesla makes most of its money not from selling cars, but from selling environmental credits to other car companies.
I did not know that. But
yes, so car companies have to meet a certain amount of electric and green vehicles. And if they don't, then they have to buy these credits from a company that does sell. And so they only made, I think it was around $117 million from cars last year, selling them. They made over $3 billion off these tax credits that other car companies purchased from Tesla. So basically, him selling cars is a front for other companies to give him money. Now, Nancy Pelosi and some other people in Congress and Senate and, probably other areas of government have stock in Tesla.
Yep.
What happens if Workhorse becomes a viable competitor to Tesla? Other companies can then buy those credits from Workhorse, and Tesla won't be doing as well, and their stocks are going to fall.
Right, yeah.
Okay. It doesn't make sense from any standpoint you look at it, except for it's going to make somebody a lot of money.
And I hate to use that term because it's like you have to grasp at straws when there's so many weird things that happen that seem to be on face value against Biden's best interests.
Right, and it doesn't. So also the waiting to give us stimulus money. So one, it ain't theirs. It's already our money.
Yeah,
just give it back.
It's tax money.
And they're launching this crazy campaign, all these billionaires coming out and saying, don't give money. Now that, I assume, might be because a lot of people are out of work. They have the power of the internet. They've already seen everybody go after hedge funds. And so they don't want more money in our pockets because they don't want to keep losing money. But I also think, too, that holding out might be to do something. So I'm waiting to see what is going to be just like sped over in the news real quick around the time the stimulus arrives. Like, are we going to be bombing somewhere new?
Yeah,
are we gonna pass another law that's really helping big business and corporations, but just getting rid of
like the new Patriot Act? I'm going to talk about that in another show. We might wait till the next show to actually go over that. It looks like Nancy Pelosi is already floating a domestic Patriot Act.
Yeah.
And I just saw one article on that. I want to do some research before I talk about it. But.
And the squad released a letter saying that they are totally against another Patriot Act, but will they vote against it?
Good question.
Is the question.
I guess we should.
And I really hope they do. If they are going to take a stand against anything, that needs to be it, and they need to hold it up. They can't just go out there and say, "Well, we voted against it. We don't like it." And then it goes through anyway. You need to hold it up.
Yeah.
Because Americans cannot lose more freedom for the sake of safety. You can't.
And that's going to be that'll be a test for the squad because they have been very vocal about the trauma that they faced and how they want there to be more spying, or not more spying, but they want people to be monitored so something like this doesn't happen again. And they're willing to go so far as revoke First Amendment rights to defend this and stuff. So it'll be a test to see if they actually stand by their principles, and I hope they do.
Right. And in the letter, letter, AOC and some other ones, because I don't know who wrote it. I'm sure they all kind of had a hand, but it said if you can't stop it with what you have now, you're never going to stop it because you have all the tools at your disposal. On top of that, people in Trump's cabinet were already briefed. He knew it was going to happen, and they let it happen. Yeah. Just like 9/11, even Egypt's Central Intelligence Agency informed us that we were going to get hit by planes.
See, this is the thing, man. I'm not sold that they can make the Capitol riot out to be as nefarious as 9/11 so that it lands with the public.
No.
And you have to have a lot of public support to pass something like the Patriot Act for people to be that willfully blinded by something. And 9/11, I think, resonated. It hit a nerve more than the Capitol riot does.
People.
I don't think most people really give a shit about
look, some Congress people were scared.
Right, exactly. I don't think that, people are more concerned about school shootings, and we're not starting out a new Patriot Act for school shootings.
I don't know how you stand on it, but me, I have kids, and I know you have a daughter, and so we would never, ever want our kids in that situation. But I'm also all for gun rights. I want
and I would never
guns.
Yeah, and I would also not just because there are school shootings. I don't want us to lose liberties via another domestic Patriot Act just because there are other ways around it. And again, that's of course Nancy Pelosi. The only reason she wants to do something like this is because she's absurdly corrupt. She's part of the liberal elite, and she sees herself as, and all the elites do, as, well, we have to spy on the proletariat as much as we can to make sure that we're squashing little uprisings here or there. They're all for maintaining a surveillance state on us in any way possible. They don't care what guise they have to use to get it because it allows them to quash uprisings, rebellion.
And I think it's important too that, and I think everybody knows this by now, but it's after Trump, or during Trump, and then after Trump, what you see now, it's just like they're not even trying to hide the corruption anymore.
No,
it's because every American wants their money right now. We want our money right now, just like the J.G. Wentworth commercial. It's my money, I want it now. And that's all anybody wants. And you have these people, they ran in Georgia, they got the Senate seat. They know that if they keep stiffing it to the American people, the Democrats are going to lose in 2 years.
Yep.
Why do they not care? Because they're not in it for us. They're in it for the money. And they're going to get the money whether they win or they lose. And so holding out on us has to be benefiting somebody. I just don't know who it's benefiting.
Yeah.
But that's the only explanation.
Yep, it always is. Follow the money, as Jesse Ventura always says. So let's move on real quick. We're going to talk about the Stop Cheaters Act. Now, that's cheaters in all capitals. It's an acronym, and I can't remember. It's hilarious, the acronym that Khanna decided to use.
It's still probably not going to be as good as the Stop Bezos
No,
Act.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But he got mouthy with it, which is nice. It's like the Stop Cheaters Act is basically. It's going to close a lot of the loopholes when it comes to offshore tax havens, but the most important thing it does is it gives $100 billion to the IRS, specifically with the goal of reeling in tax evasion by the wealthiest, and it says like the top earners, $10 million a year or more, are the ones that are really going to get hit by this. Individuals that make $10 million a year or more, professional athletes, actors, CEOs, hedge fund managers. And then the other one thing that's going to be hit by the IRS a little bit harder is going to be companies that have a net worth over $20 billion or have $20 billion worth of capital, and so they're going to get re-audited. A lot of money is going to go back into our system, but they're not going to. I don't think they're actually going to They're not going to audit them over things they've already done. They're just going to capture things that happen in the future, as far as I know from the bill. So as far as I know, it's $100 billion over the next 10 years, and it's expected to bring back in about $1.1 to $1.2 trillion in extra taxes from the wealthy over that 10-year span. So $12 to every 1 year spending to get it. And all that it does is it's going to re-audit and make sure that there are no big tax loopholes for hiding money in offshore 0% interest accounts, where they don't have to pay anything on their income taxes offshore. And that's an enormous amount of money to make over 10 years for such a small investment. I think it's wonderful. I want to get your take.
I think it's wonderful if it's implemented correctly. Mm-hmm. So I worry that a lot of that's going to be used against the everyman and the working poor. And the IRS is going to be like, well, we got to make this money back. We got all this money to do audits. Let's do audits. And what they're going to do is they're going to go after people that are struggling, that didn't claim everything exactly.
Well, it says that it's specifically real. It's mostly geared towards people that make over $10 million a year.
Right, but the laws that they're going to put in place will have to be for everybody.
Right, and they specifically said that all they're doing is they're just using the same law that people already get taxed at, the normal everyday person, middle class and lower class, and just giving the wealthy those exact same laws to have to follow and enforcing them. That's really it is, the enforcement. So it levels the playing field, and the thing I like about this is that it's so manila and so hyper-focused at the obscenely wealthy that even Larry Summers was on board for it, I think, and the Center for American Progress, which that's Neera Tanden's, propaganda machine for the Clintons. Right. They're on board for this as well. So it's so hyper-focused on the obscenely wealthy that even the, neoliberal, centrist, moderate Republican Democrats are actually on board for it. Right. And because it produces so much money, costs so little, and really only gets, the people that are really,
Right. Well, think about it. You could take that that $100 billion over 10 years, right? And you could audit literally the entirety of the United States' bottom 99% earners, and you might make that trillion back in a decade, but I highly doubt it. But all you got to do is go after 8 of the wealthiest families, and they mess up a little bit, boom, done. But Ro Khanna's smart, knowing that you have to close those loopholes first. Mm-hmm. Because if he leaves them open, all they're going to say is, well, everything I did was legal.
Right.
Everything I did is fine.
Yep, you close the loopholes and then get them for it. And he's not even saying, and I think that's another reason it's so appealing to people in power right now, is that it's not saying, oh, we're going to go after people retroactively, because a lot of these people are dirty as hell. So you never get people like that on board for a bill like that, like Larry Summers. You telling me that motherfucker hasn't done some sort of shady stuff? Every one of them has. They're ultra rich people. So, but the fact that it's just no, what we're going to do is we're going to close them up front. Tell you guys what we're closing. So you guys, if you're in it, get out of it now. Otherwise, we're going to get you. And some of the higher ups, they will absolutely do it because they know that if it does get passed, they're going to get nailed. But the dummies, like the Wolf of Wall Street guys that are really, really stupid and arrogant and super ultra cocky, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, thinking they're untouchable, and they will get nailed. And it's
just like Trump. where he would overvalue his buildings
properties
when it was for like insurance or selling them, or like saying, "Oh, hey, I want to build this thing in this area," and then he'd go and he'd be like, "But it's only worth like,
there's a million
shitty.
ways to do it.
It's crappy," or he'd like claim it on taxes. "Oh, it's not really worth that much," and they're like, "Wait a minute, buddy." But he got away with it for so long because no one goes after the wealthy.
Yeah, and there's simply not enough money in the IRS to do it. So this is not a be-all, end-all, guys. I'm just giving props where it's due. It's a very nice targeted bill that produces a lot of money, and I've been talking a lot over the last couple of weeks about how we could pay for that UBI I talked about in the U of M study, which would basically eliminate poverty in the U.S. for $219 billion a year. This theoretically could create $1.2 trillion over a decade. So that's 5 years worth of UBI paid for by just this bill alone over the decade, of course. So if you just came up with one other thing like this that produced about the same amount from taxing the wealthy, you pay for the UBI, eliminate poverty.
Well, and not even just taxing the wealthy. I love it's less than 1% Wall Street speculation tax.
Yeah, yep.
And
that's the easiest one.
And a lot of people are like, what about my 401k or this or that or that? Look, if it's less than 1%, and say your 401k is $100,000, you're barely going to get taxed.
Right.
And even if you're mega ultra wealthy and you're making billions of dollars a year, you're still barely going to get I mean, to you it's barely anything. To most people it's more than they'll make in a lifetime. But another thing is what most people don't realize, that's just your money making money. You're not going out, you're not toiling. You're not losing anything.
Mitt Romney makes $40 million a year, doesn't lift a finger.
Yeah.
And he's got a stock portfolio that's this thick.
And so it just bothers me when I see normal...
The other thing, too, is that a lot of the speculation tax is just based off of... It's a transaction tax, so it only happens when you're actually trading stocks or bonds. So if you're not actually actively trading, you don't really see that much of an increase at all, like none. It's for the people that are trading, thousands, millions of shares a day that actually produce most of that revenue.
That mostly affects companies because a lot of people don't know this. Almost all the trading anymore is done by robot.
Yeah.
It's all done by AI. And so they actually they had to put laws in place because for a long time all these companies were trying to fight to get buildings as close to Wall Street as possible, because if you had shorter fiber optic cables, then the little nanosecond that your data took... And so what would happen is your little nanosecond would make you do the transaction first.
Yep.
So you would beat out the competition.
Slightly advantageous.
So now no matter how close your company is to Wall Street, you have to have the same exact length of fiber optic cable as any other company. It's all regulated.
That's
now.
Bananas. That
and
doesn't
they
surprise
do,
me at all.
but what
That's
they do
crazy.
is they do millions upon millions of transactions per second, making just tiny increments of change. Like not even.
So you're actually saving up a lot of time because of the amount of transactions.
So basically, what you're doing is you're
having a fiber optic cable that's that short.
You're buying low, you're selling high over and over and over and over and over again all day. But what you're doing is you're just waiting till it goes up, just like a tiny little minute percentage. But you do that millions of times, and those like 0.001% of a penny adds up, and by the end of the day, you've made millions of dollars.
Or lost millions of dollars, depending on how slow your internet is.
Well, most of the time, the robots are like, "Oh, I'm not going to sell if I'm losing money," and so when people get involved and they're like, "Oh yeah, we gotta short this, or we're gonna sell this," and yada yada yada, it's different. But the programs themselves, the companies that own those machines that make all that money, they would be taxed with that Wall Street speculation tax. And that's why they fight it so hard.
Yep, absolutely. And it's just that easy. It's one of the many ways. The other way I was going to say, by the way, this is not, something I want to talk about in depth on the show, but another way you could pay for it is simply just, don't build stupid shit like the F-35 jet. Like, it costs $1.6 or $1.7 trillion.
Hey, look, that jet is trying its best.
Dude, it, melts in the sunlight. Like, the coating that they put on it, flakes in the sun.
Right. No, that
and it was to help it, I don't even remember if it was to help it remain under radar or undetectable on radar, but it didn't work at all. It didn't land properly. There was 10, 15 different things that were wrong with this fucking thing.
Yeah, the jet that it was made to replace, the other one's better.
Yeah, it works way better. So 1.6, $1.7 trillion. By comparison, UBI that just gets rid of poverty in the U.S. So it's a means-tested UBI. I want to get that clear. So it's not a true UBI, but it would eliminate poverty and help a whole lot of people right now. $219 billion a year, $1.7 trillion was spent on the F-35 fighter jet. If we just stop stuff like that, we could easily pay for this.
And anybody against this? All right, so me and Rob are both like, well, he's like straight up burn it all down kind of guy. I am more of a democratic socialist. I'm not as far to the left as Rob, but I was actually talking to somebody who was watching the show, and they were saying how they didn't really agree with making utilities owned by the taxpayer. Now, when I say things like that, so when I say Medicare for all, or when I say socialized internet, or if I say socialized utilities like water, energy, I want you to know that if you're listening, it's after we fix the corruption in the system. So, for instance, if we just implemented Medicare for all right now, would everybody have medical insurance? Yes. But all these pharmaceutical companies would just jack up all their prices because they know they'd be getting paid. So I like things like the Stop Bezos Act, where if you are paying your workers and they are on welfare, you get taxed to make up for that welfare.
Yes.
That's only fair. Or another one of Bernie's is his lobbying bill, which made all meetings with lobbyists part of basically the public domain, and you could listen in and get transcripts.
Yeah.
And so you would know who's bought by who, and your money wouldn't be as like quiet, and people could be upset about that. And a lot of, especially now, a lot of bills are getting passed to try to make dark money even harder to trace.
Jeez,
and so I think if you get rid of the corruption, you get rid of money in politics, and you make the politicians work for the people, then the people and the taxpayer money going for these things would be beneficial. If you keep the corruption in place, it's just more companies are going to siphon off taxpayer money, things are going to fall into disrepair, yada, yada, yada. So you have to fix the corruption first. So when I say anything like that, know that there are steps that need to be taken first before we can go full democratic socialists.
Yep, and just real quickly, you can't have, I want a centralized government for many things that I believe are a human right, but I also admit that you cannot have a corrupt centralized government running those things the way that they will demonize a lot of socialists as like authoritarian left.
Yes.
And they say that there's a huge centralized government that controls every part of your life, and we don't necessarily have a democratic process of keeping the people in power in check. That's not what I want. That's hyperbole. What I really want is, yes, I want a centralized government to run a few things in your life that are paid for by tax dollars and highly democratized.
Yes.
And then the rest, I want libertarian. That's where I fall. And but you're right. Yeah, you can't. If you assume that like we're going to move to a more centralized government that takes care of these things, but we don't get rid of money in politics, it would be worse.
Yes.
So I agree. But we
worse.
have to get rid of money. If you get rid of money in politics, overturn Citizens United, and make it so that we can actually get a clean democracy, then yeah, that's what I want ideally.
Well, there's also what I say to a lot of people, and Ben, I've said this to Ben before. Because a lot of people they don't want big central government because they don't want their lives being like run by Big Brother. Totally agree. But what I say is, if the government listens to the people and responds to the people, then why would you be scared? Because if the government does what you want them to do, then it's okay if they have a lot of power because their power comes from you.
Also,
but things are right now, when government has taken away the power of the people, or big companies have taken away the power of the people, of course you don't want a big government. I mean, they're all there running dementiated candidates. You got like Nancy Pelosi. For some reason, when I see her, I just think of a cat litter box. She just like reminds me.
I think ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah, she's just just get rid of all of them. They're so awful.
I've often said that she takes her donations from Big Pharma as Botox injections direct into her face.
Yes. No,
She doesn't take money anymore. She doesn't need money. What she really needs is the Botox into her face.
But yeah, the Stop Cheaters Act is a very small baby step in the right direction.
But it is a way to make a bunch of money, and you're right. And it's framed well. That's the thing. It's targeted, it's framed well. Even neoliberals are on board for it, which is why it's good, which is why it has a chance of passing. And very good job, Khanna. I am impressed.
We like you.
We keep going. I haven't forgiven you for not voting against Nancy Pelosi, but the bill is good. So let's talk real quickly about the rioters. I'm just going to throw out a couple of stats. I was talking in, I think, episode 1 or 2 about how I thought that a lot of the rioters probably would not have found the motivation to jump off their couches in their trailer parks to go and riot at the Capitol had they not been in dire straits financially. And as it turns out, Chris Hedges, who writes for SheerPost, and this was posted in SheerPost and Mint Press News, was writing a fantastic article about not just this, but he did document the 145 at the time indicted rioters. Of those 145, over a fifth of them were bankrupt at the time of the riot, and more than 60% of them had been bankrupt at one point over the last decade.
Right, and why do you think they would go on the Trump side? Well, I think it's, fear-mongering. Oh, I'm bankrupt because they're giving all my, tax money to, welfare for other countries, and
immigrants
illegals
are taking my
stealing
jobs. It's driving my wages down because they're willing to work for less. It's all bogus.
Yeah.
But these people do go for Trump. But and it's still my opinion that the riot would not have been nearly as big if it had happened at all had we had a monthly stimulus check. I just don't see a people that's doing well, able to isolate at home, getting up in arms about. Well, for one thing, let's just put it this way. Trump would not have lost the presidency had he done this.
No, he would have
a single stimulus check of any kind towards the end, or certainly a monthly stimulus check, would have re-won him in the election, and the riot never would have happened. But these are a bunch of very destitute people who are more destitute recently, and they also they're too dumb to know who to lash out at. They don't know. They couldn't figure out a senator or somebody from Congress to call if they tried.
Well, I also think it's a lot of... you hear one thing on the news about COVID is awful, we need to take care of it, but then there's a whole bunch of half measures, especially in Illinois. So we had, bars and stuff close, but you could still go to Walmart and Kroger, and early on, nobody had to wear a mask. So when I was going, my girlfriend was pregnant with our son at the time. And so before he was born and COVID hit, she was A blood type, and I know a thing came out from those Asian countries, because I know blood type's more of a thing in their culture, that A types are more susceptible to COVID. Okay. And she was pregnant, and you can pass the COVID off to the baby. And so she basically never left the house. So I did all the shopping and stuff. And so I would go to Walmart, and I ordered masks online, but you can find masks. But they did come, and I did go to the store, but I go to the store, it'd be packed, full of people, so you're just moving. You're moving from the bar to the big stores. And so a lot of people would be like, well, that doesn't make sense. You're putting all these small businesses out of work, and, Walmart, you can go to Walmart without a mask, you go to Kroger, and so you have all these, Democrats saying you need to watch out, COVID's dangerous, and then you have the Republicans saying, no, don't worry about it, we need to open up. And so I think a lot of their anger, too, was centered around, all the Democrats were closing things off, and they're the reason why COVID's so bad. You should just ignore it and open everything up, and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And so I think that definitely led to it, too. I mean, they definitely blamed the left more for their financial ills than the right, ignoring that for years, from Reagan to both Bushes to Trump, all those policies of tax cuts for the rich and deregulation on businesses hurt them more than COVID ever did.
Yep. I can't say much more than that. They're propagandized well.
The right is great at propaganda.
Yeah, they're very well propagandized, and they're just not, they don't quite know what to do. So that's all I have to say about that. I knew it had something to do with it, of course, and I don't think it would have been as big of a thing, but it's convenient for the neoliberals. Now they get to run with it, and maybe Nancy Pelosi will get her Patriot Act. I hope not. We'll keep you up to date on
I
that.
will be marching, and if there are riots, I probably will be rioting if that is going to pass. And I'm not even going to lie.
It's bad.
The first time I heard it, I think I was like 10 or 11 or something, 12, 13, around that time. I was pretty young, but I heard about that, and I knew it was going to strip our freedoms away, and then later on Snowden came out, and I was like, what, y'all didn't know that already?
And it's going to get way worse. This is more like more domestic is what they'll do, because it happened, it was Americans doing it, so...
Yeah, it's...
Jeez, man, it boggles the mind, and it scares me a lot. Let's real quick move on to Bernie voting against the new nominee for the Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
So, just to be fair, Bernie did vote against Tom Vilsack, who has been the head of the Department of Agriculture before under Obama. And it didn't matter. He was still outvoted 92-7. But he was the one Democrat to vote against Tom Vilsack, and that's good because we have a decent track record of Tom Vilsack. I'm going to let Ian kind of go over.
Yeah, it actually blew my mind that any Republicans voted against him, but I'm assuming it's because they just hate Biden and they're going to always vote against Biden regardless.
Probably.
But so Tom Vilsack is a Democrat that is actually a Republican.
Yep.
And so I will say that I will give him credit where credit's due. He did do something. He was better at promoting renewable technology. He did take some steps to help with greenhouse gases. Those are questionable, but I mean, a broken clock's right twice a day. But I did find a great article that is centerforsafety.org that went over 9 reasons why he's awful. But you don't even need to really go into that. You can just look at the hearing, some of the testimony, dig into all that. And so I did take some notes about some things that really I just think seal it.
Okay.
So one is that we right now live in a time where big corporations are doing very well and smaller businesses are getting wiped out. COVID made it worse, but it was happening before that with Amazon and Walmart and Redbox and streaming services. And, it's harder for small guys to compete when everybody else has all the resources. But one company that has been vilified for a long time is Monsanto. For good reason.
Worst of the worst, man.
One of the worst companies on the planet. So, Bayer Pharmaceuticals and Monsanto merged.
And Monsanto no longer exists in name. It's now owned by Bayer because the Monsanto name was so toxic they wanted to get rid of it.
Just like everything they make, strangely enough. And so, in the history of Tom Vilsack, he's almost always supported big companies like Monsanto.
Yep.
So, you can do research on your own. There are so many stories, far too numerous to count or cite here, about Monsanto basically shafting it to small family farms. From their GMO crops to their own hired private investigators. Then they come after these small family farms with, court case after court case after court case. They just don't have the money or the time, and they end up giving in. And so Monsanto is a plight on basically anybody in the Midwest. We all know.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that GMOs are not inherently bad. I am upset that taxpayer money goes to discovering and creating new GMOs. Those GMOs are then bought by big ag, like Monsanto, and then sold back to people, just like pharmaceuticals, so we get charged twice for our own product.
Yep.
But I digress. So, but the main issue, I think, is less about GMOs and more about pesticides. So, Roundup, owned by Monsanto, hid the fact as trade secrets that their pesticides caused cancer. And Tom Vilsack was a big proponent of pushing pro-pesticides. Mm-hmm. And what he did was he promoted GMO, so like pesticide-resistant GMOs, for farmers, and they said, now you can spray during growing season, so your crops will keep growing, but it'll kill the weeds. And so you'd think, as a farmer, that's a great idea. I can kill the weeds, my crops will keep growing, I'll make more money, whatever, that's fine. But what happened was, these pesticides were known to drift. And so these pesticides would drift, and they would kill family crops, they would kill gardens, They would cause people to get sick. They basically wiped out all these small family farms in competition. And that's because Tom Vilsack said, well, I don't give a shit about your stuff. He knew it would happen, and he okayed it anyway. Also, another thing that's really pertinent now because of COVID going on. So, he privatized meat inspectors, and you think like, oh, that's not really that big of a deal. And, okay, it might not have been privatizing meat inspectors if they're doing a good job, but it kind of snowballed. So, after that, there was another man that he had put into power that basically ran a lot of things, and he suggested, I can't remember his name, but he suggested that they increase the production, like, line speed.
Oh, jeez.
In these meat packing plants. And so workers and safety people came out and was like, no, we'll have to hire more people, we'll have to work harder, we're going to be missing things because you're just cranking out more meat than we can keep up with. And Tom Vilsack was like, but it's good for business, and if it's good for business, it's good for the people, so let's do it, fam.
It's hilarious that it's that simple. Like, it's so cartoonish where it's just like this guy that Tom Vilsack puts in there, he just goes in and he's supposed to be inspecting things, and he's like, because he's pure capitalist, he goes, well, what if we make the conveyor belt and go faster? Yeah, that's his, he's like, I think the most important thing is we're going too slow. We need to really speed things up for safety purposes.
If you make the chicken carcass go faster than a certain mile per hour, the bugs can't climb onto it.
Yeah, right.
So we'll just crank all the chicken
It's just
out.
capitalist bullshit. Like they bring him in here, and it's like USDA is supposed to make sure these things are safe and for consumption, but all he cares about is how fast they can get done. Anyway, I digress.
No,
it's
and
hilarious.
So what happened was, Tom Vilsack was like, okay, yes, we will increase the standards for speed, despite protests from safety advocates whose job it was to keep people safe because the conveyor belts are moving faster, you're going to have more people, more bad stuff could happen. And the workers who, if you know from the stories from COVID, that work at places like Tyson Chicken, they get treated like slaves already, and now you're going to add more work to them. So what happened was, after that passed, it created a precedent. And so when the Trump administration came in, they were like, okay, let's just increase it nationwide. Mm-hmm. And they did. Well, when you increase it, guess what you got to do? Got to hire more workers. You'd think that's good. You got to hire more workers get paid, they make more money. That would be the case if you didn't look at the productivity and pay graph.
No, that never worked. You never get paid.
No, you hire more workers, and then you hire more workers in at lower pay because there's less competition for the job, and the company makes more money, the CEOs get vacations, and the workers basically work till they die. But also, I digress. So then what happened was they had to hire more workers. Well, in any plant that hired more workers to keep up with this demand, they found a 10 times more likely of COVID infections.
10 times. Gina.
10 times. So then you have companies like Tyson, who, by the way, could get loans up to $100 million to buy personal protective equipment, then claim that on their taxes as a tax write-off up to $100 million. So they can borrow $100 million, write off $100 million, they get free taxpayer money, and they were shown still not buying personal protective equipment for their employees.
God, I didn't know that. That's
So,
and it doesn't surprise me, the 10 times thing, man. That's
So not only did they make COVID worse, so Tom Vilsack is directly responsible for the deaths of workers.
See, and that's dude. He cannot be, and he got. Why did he get over 90% of the votes? Ask yourself that. Bipartisan, because he is part of the elite. He's done it before, and he did exactly what they wanted him to do back then, which was get rid of or do the best he could to enhance the chances of corporate farming taking over rather than organic family farming.
And I also did some research on this. Bayer, who owns Monsanto, has spent $9,150,000 in lobbyist costs in 2019. 2020 numbers I couldn't find.
It'll be about that.
Yep. And so, if they're spending money lobbying in Washington, of course they're going to want people friendly to their cause. And
they know they have a track record.
Lo and behold,
It seems to me that Biden is looking to basically like just put people in there that were in there during the Obama administration,
right,
or the Clinton administration. I mean, that would be fine for him too. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. But it looks like he basically is like, who's been there before? I don't want to interview anyone new. Let's just put people that I know are tried and true that everybody knows are going to pass.
And back when Obama was in office, and a lot of Democrats thought he was great. Especially me, I didn't know a lot of the stuff he did till after Obama.
Yeah.
And I got into independent media. You find out that, if he's just trying to go back to the Obama era for optics, of course the news is going to fawn over him. Everybody's going to think he's great.
Yep.
They thought Obama was great. And I don't think he knows exactly how much more informed the American people are now, and how much more they distrust mainstream media now.
And that's exactly right. And the other thing is, and I hate playing identity politics, but a lot of people fawned over Obama because he was black, and Biden does not have that buffer. They're just going to be like, it's an old, corrupt white guy, so you don't get the extra, like, those people that are just interested in identity politics, and Obama was such a great orator. Biden, not a good orator, definitely corrupt. I'm not saying he's not unlikable like Clinton was, Hillary Clinton, but like he doesn't have that advantage that Obama had either. People are gonna savage him the way they wouldn't Obama.
I'm just gonna say, I think things would be different if he picked Corn Pop to be his VP. If Corn Pop was his VP pick, I would have been excited.
He's way blacker than Kamala Harris. I've never seen him, but if he's black at all,
he sounded pretty black.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be a light-skinned guy, but
name like Corn Pop, right?
I'm gonna assume that he was a light-skinned guy. Otherwise, I don't think Biden would even talk to him.
Yeah,
Biden's racist and shit.
Yeah, yes, he is. Let's talk about the last thing of the day. Unless you have anything else to talk about,
I just want to talk about how
is not qualified in our opinion to be head of the Department of Agriculture.
Okay. I will just say real quick that the fact that we're not getting back into the Iran deal is complete shit, Biden.
Yes.
The fact that we've joined the Paris Climate Accord, but we are opening drilling, and we are basically shafting a company stationed out of Ohio that makes electric cars, so we can go with a fucking biodiesel company that builds armored vehicles, is another giant fuck you, Biden.
It's another thing he promised on the campaign trail too, twice I think I saw. And once was a while back when he first started campaigning, and another one was recently. He's like, we definitely are going to go to like an E-fleet for the USPS. And I was like, okay, that's something he might actually do, because it's so small that he can actually do it, and it makes sense on all angles. So when I saw that, it even blew my mind, because it was like, how ultra corrupt do you have to be to not take the minor baby step of just this? And we're stuck with this for 30 years.
Yeah.
As long as those vehicles even hold up remotely like the old vehicles do, we're in big trouble.
And the fact that maybe we have put a hold to review the Saudi arms deal, but they're going to change the definition of defensive.
Like off as an event.
And on top of that, and we're still not condemning their actions
in Yemen.
Another fuck you, Biden. It's a
food embargo. It's a food embargo.
And
That's
a medicine
one, war.
Which is violating international law, and I don't think Biden's lifted that.
No, he has not. So let's talk about, real quickly, we have a couple of assholes, updates on assholes. Ted Cruz's favorability rating dropped 20 points since his trip to Cancun. That's awesome.
Is it because he went to Cancun?
I think so.
Or did he shave his beard?
I tweeted. Oh, dude, that beard was bad. I don't think that's gonna help him any, but that beard was pretty bad.
He's just awful.
I tweeted. I was like, right after the Cancun thing, I was like, if they found out definitively that Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer today, it would not affect his favorability rating at all. He would be rating at about 10%.
There's always groupies for serial killers that are are really weird, and they're just like, yeah, I know he murdered a bunch of women and ate them, but like, he's so dreamy.
Oh, I wanna. You know.
Ted Cruz wouldn't have any. Ted Cruz would be like, okay, he's the Zodiac Killer, but like, meh. I don't think I'd bang. I'd probably go to the messenger graveyard, or the Instagram DM, and just find a skeezy motherfucker before I try to jump on Ted Cruz.
I could see a woman that is that type that goes after serial killers. It's like reading his Tinder profile from prison or whatever, and he's like, and she's just like, he's a serial killer. Interesting. oh, he's a Republican politician. That's gross. No, I don't want. I don't want anything to do with him.
I like his wife is probably so happy. She's like, man, just like stay in Texas forever.
Yeah.
And, yeah. I just.
So that was good news. It just made me laugh. He'll come back up, and he's still not as hated as like McConnell or Pelosi, I don't think. But 20 points is a lot. It's because he's in Texas, and he's still like his policies are simpatico with a lot of people in that state.
But I've seen him I saw an interview he did with like a white cowboy hat on. Terrible. The beard, terrible. Like, just admit that you look awful. You're just awful. Period. And I was also one of these people, like, if Texas votes red again, like, this is kind of on them. But then I saw this map of the gerrymandering that takes place in Texas. It blew my fucking mind.
Yeah, I know.
It's insane with how much Democrats they packed into a single district.
Right, yeah.
So, of course, no matter how many, like, that district's going to get less representation. And so it almost flipped blue, and I guarantee you if the gerrymandering wasn't as bad, it would have flipped blue.
Yeah, we'll have to go for gerrymandering on a different episode.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's going to be it's rampant in the South. Lastly, Andrew Cuomo. I was talking about him on the last show I was doing with the shithead of the week, and I didn't give it to Cuomo. I was talking about how he not only shit the bed on readmitting a whole bunch of those elderly people into their nursing homes without testing them for COVID when he knew some of them were sick. That's strike number one.
Hey, old people don't matter. Sacrifice for
right,
the economy.
Dude. Oh, God, it's so bad. And then it gets worse. Then he wrote that provision into his annual budget that was giving corporate immunity to people that were the CEOs of private nursing homes and private hospitals. Yep. Strike number two. Now it's turning out that he actually downplayed, and they reported up to 50% less deaths, at least initially, when it was the epicenter, when New York was the epicenter of the virus outbreak. And that is unbelievably bad.
Yes.
So Andrew Cuomo is he should not just resign. He might go to prison, or not prison, but he might see time. He won't actually. But in a country that made sense with this kind of negligence, there could be a criminal case against him.
Yeah, because what you're doing is, one, people change their behavior if they're smart based on data. When you mess with that large amount of data, you're going to be changing a lot of people's minds, and they're going to be doing things they normally wouldn't do if they knew how high the risk really was. On top of that, you're sending people back to places when they are sick and they are going to cause more deaths willingly.
An investigation will probably reveal that there were probably hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths linked to that decision by itself, if there's a long investigation.
And the decision didn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense if you talk about, and Justin Jackson did a great video on this. There was a lobbyist group for the nursing homes and private hospitals called Khanna. And I can't remember exactly the acronym, but they gave Andrew Cuomo's re-election campaign $1 million in the last weeks when he was looking like he might actually be usurped. So Justin Jackson did a great video on that on the Takedown. Check that out. That explains why, actually. If you
I thought it was probably the crematorium's lobbyist.
the coffin lobbyist.
Yep, they were like, hey man, look, I got a whole bunch of these coffins.
I don't know what to do
with
them,
man. Not enough people are dying. You gotta help me out, Cuomo. And Cuomo's like, well, give me that money.
Here's this nice pie that my wife baked you. Have a look inside that nice pie. Anyway.
Oh my God! And the amount, like, how hard it is to catch
it was $1 million. It was $1 million of lobbying money.
I just love that in this country that we live in, land of the free, home of the brave, you know, apple pie, banging your cousin, whatever you want to, whatever. It's you can have a company donate millions of dollars to a candidate. That candidate can win. And then do things that directly benefit that company and go against the good and the will of the people. And they're like, well, it's not corruption.
Yep.
What? That's just how it works, bro.
And now, because it's operating like a mob, if Cuomo goes down, he's the fall guy. Because he took the money, and he did the deed, and he got caught. So you know the lobbyists aren't going to get in trouble. They didn't have anything to do with it. They just gave him money. He's the guy that did it. He's the one that's going to take it.
Hey,
so
it's free speech. I was just telling Cuomo how much I liked him.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't have to do anything
They're
for me.
not implicated at all, but we know it's all bribes.
Ridiculous. This corruption needs to end, otherwise nothing will ever get better.
So as best we can, I'm always going to bash at least somebody on the Republican side and and the Democratic side, as you've seen on my show, on our show, that we give it to both sides. That's my point. And those are the two assholes of the
Republicans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess very good point.
They're both right-wingers.
Last thing here, big news. We don't have any more information than what I'm going to give to you in this headline. Biden has, in fact, bombed Syria. He bombed he bombed one single... It said multiple facilities in a single airstrike. In Syria, initial news reports were that is an Iran-backed base, or whatever they hit. So he might be getting hawkish with Iran, certainly being hawkish with Syria. Right. We'll bring you more details when we know more, but I saw at least 2 headlines so far, and I think one of them was even in Forbes, that it was an Iran-backed facility that they bombed in a single
It does worry me that I think probably one of the scariest things is U.S. foreign policy, and how, I swear to God, one of these days, somebody that hates us is going to nuke us.
Oh, dude.
And...
knock on wood.
And that's gonna... A lot of innocent people are probably gonna die. All because these rich people needed to get more wealthy.
Get back in the fucking Iran deal. I've yelled it on a separate episode. Get back. It's so fucking easy. The Obama administration wrote it. They want to get back in. Why are you not back in it? It's silly. We'll keep you updated on that as early as tomorrow. We'll see what the updates are as they come through. And lastly, I just wanted to talk for about 10 minutes about us a little bit. I'm going to ask Ian a question, and he's going to ask me a question, and we're just going to kind of chat. I'm going to get to know him a little bit, and he's going to get to know me, and you'll get to know us in the time being.
Yeah, so this would be the time to skip.
If you don't care. But my question for you is, I know you don't like your job too much.
I like my job. I don't like the people I work with.
Oh, fair enough. Whatever. So
you know who you are.
I guess my question is, if you could do anything other than just talk shit with me here and maybe do 1 or 2 other hobbies for money and make a living, what would those 2 hobbies be?
All right. So if I didn't break so easy, I would love to do boxing.
Boxing.
But because I break all the time, that's a no-go. I'd say my art and my writing would definitely be what I would like to do the most. I would be home more often with the kids. I could do have my creative outlet. I could do some political satire stuff, and it just seems like creating something that I enjoy, that other people would also enjoy, and making money off that would be the best way to live my life.
Yep, I agree 100%, sure. Man.
Either that or punching people and also being punched. So.
Oh yeah, whatever, man.
The duality of man.
That's okay. I don't think the boxing thing's in the cards for you. A little too old right now.
Yeah, way too old for it. And I've broken so many bones. It's just ridiculous. But also, I wouldn't mind being a stay-at-home dad either. Back when I was unemployed after COVID for 2 months, I was just a stay-at-home dad, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So any, widows out there, or sugar mamas, hit me up. Let me just stay at home all day.
It is pretty cool. I've been off since the end of October. October 31st was my last day at my last job. I had to quit as a chiropractor, because the COVID restrictions that my boss had in place were pathetic, and no matter how much I dogged him, he would not put any in place. And I just couldn't risk it. I knew it was going to get bad going into the winter, and I couldn't keep touching people's face. It was causing me panic attacks and anxiety up the wazoo. So I've been out of work since then, and I can't tell you how much I love spending the extra time with my daughter. I've been doing some writing as well. It is pretty fun. That it's a lot of time I didn't get with her when I was working a lot. So it's pretty awesome, I have to admit. I'm not bored at all. I love it. I love every bit of it.
Working is shit, and I hate it.
It is, yeah, right. And I'm trying to get some books published as well.
I like being productive, but I like doing it on my own terms that benefit me and not somebody else. I hate the fact that so there was a time where I was working with a gentleman who will not be named, who had diabetes. He couldn't work at all. He couldn't do, so I do security. And so he couldn't do the patrols. He couldn't do duties. He had damaged a foot, and when you're diabetic, it can get necrotic. Yeah. It did get necrotic. He actually ended up leaving because he lost his foot.
Oh, jeez.
But I was doing all the patrols. I was doing 2 gate duties and 3 patrols. I was walking around 10 miles a day. Lost 20 pounds, though, so I'm not complaining. I really liked walking it. But it's just like, I go in and I'll be, you're late and you get yelled at, but you stay and you don't get thanked. And it's just like, you are super replaceable. You do not matter in a corporation. And it's just like, I like being at home because I do matter. My kids love me and I love them. And I like spending time with them. And if I do art or I write a book and somebody buys it, it's because they enjoy what I made. And I'm happy that they enjoy it. But if you go to work at Walmart or the dollar store or a gas station or whatever, you could get hit by a car on your way to work in a blizzard and be like, well, that sucks, better hire somebody new.
That's his weird and twisted way of saying, go after your dreams, guys. Do something that makes you happy.
What I'm saying is corporate America is awful.
That too. Yeah.
Not all of it. There are some really good companies out there, but most of them.
Most of it. Yeah. Yes. Well, we don't want to get rid of all of capitalism, just 95% of it.
Yeah.
And you got a question for me?
Yeah. So I know that you write, and I know that you have a lot of like kind of dystopian kind of stuff in your books. So I got a question. One, what do you think is the most possible future for the U.S.? Not with your optimism, not what you hope. What do you think the most possible future for the U.S. is? And what would be your ideal future, say, 100 years from now?
Okay, and actually, I'll just real quickly map it out the way I think it'll go via topical references that everyone will understand.
Okay.
This is the timeline I think we've got. We're heading into something like Ready Player One, and right around the end of that, about 15, 20 years from now, we're looking at something like Elysium, where the rich go into bunkers or go into a satellite. Or I was joking earlier that they might actually colonize Mars with Elon Musk, and that might be his whole plan, is that they're going to need a safe haven in 20 years. So he's going to go to Mars. And exactly right. But they'll leave us here with all the problems. So it'll go something like Ready Player One, Elysium, and then if we don't get things under control pretty soon, likely like some sort of Mad Max, Fury Road type of thing.
Yeah.
The way that that's what I kind of suspect we're on our way towards, more or less, if we don't get things under control. And I think we've got about a decade, maybe a little less than a decade, totally, 2 elections. I think we've got to fix things before we're looking at that in this country.
I don't think we're going to end the stranglehold corporations have on our government system. But the U.S. isn't the only one, and a lot of other countries are going green. Like Trudeau from Canada, he's garbage.
Yeah,
but
Canada's doing well. Canada's doing okay. They're moving the right direction, and they're on the right track in a bunch of ways. Where if they can get somebody better than Trudeau, because they do have a couple of different parties that are far left of him, and he's actually like a right winger in Canada, or a centrist. Yeah. And there's what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. He's the socialist there. He could eventually be prime minister, and they'd be on great track. But that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go back to, I think that Ready Player One is where we're at right now, because most of it is, the United States is going to be amazingly decrepit and very impoverished, but highly entertained.
To be?
Right. But we're talking the advent of VR is pretty new, and they're going to keep doing that to the point where I worry about things like what David Foster Wallace wrote about, where he's worried that we're going to become so immersed in our entertainment, and the entertainment's going to be so good and so realistic that we'll soon be to the point where we more or less live inside of a virtual world, because we're trying to escape the hellscape that corporate America is. So that's what I worry about here.
Because I follow some Instagrams that have new tech, and they just created gloves that you can wear that allow you to feel things that you touch.
Did you read my book? Oh, did you read my book I sent you?
I have not read the whole thing.
No. Oh, no. Did you read VR Goggles yet, or Virtual Reality?
No.
Okay, I read about this. It's my best horror story that I think I've written to date, as far as just pure scares. It has to do with that stuff. Second part of the question, where do I want us to be? Where do I think we can possibly be is something like Finland or one of the Scandinavian countries, or Canada. That's where I think we can be. Not necessarily in my lifetime, but maybe in my daughter's lifetime, which is fine with me, so long as we see something like that while it matters.
Well, yeah, because once that next Patriot Act thing passes, we're probably going to get thrown into the gulag
Yeah, right.
for just simply having these conversations.
Yeah, that's right. That's okay. We'll be in there with good company.
Yeah.
What I think ideally what we could do is something akin to like, you ever seen the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yes.
Xandar, Star Trek, something like that as well. But I would ideally like it to be a little bit more based around the Earth, where you almost build your tech around the Earth. So almost like the philosophy of like the blue creatures in Avatar, where they really respect the Earth, but higher tech. Right. And I haven't seen anything like that. I don't think it's possible
just Google
for this country or for this
right.
world, because I think we're going to wipe out a lot of our nature before we get it on track. I'm just not highly optimistic.
I mean, just look at the amount of animals that have gone extinct in the last 100 years, and that's enough to make you want to fucking just blow your brains out.
Right. As an eco-socialist, it's tough for me.
It's crazy to me because I read books to my daughters that have animals that I know by the time they're my age are going to be extinct.
Yeah.
And so I read that and I'm just like, man, choking back tears, because that is just so incredibly sad. And no matter how green I am, that's not changing, because so much of the pollution is just caused by corporations.
Right.
And so, we do things like use plastic and yada, 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 but really it's up to bigger powers to really save the planet, and saving the planet is not going to make them money.
Yes, it's 71% of the emissions in the world are produced, or greenhouse gases are produced by the top 100 big corporations.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'm going to synopsize. I wish that we could have something like, there's a guy named Jacques Fresco who wrote a ton of papers, and he was an engineer and one of the brilliant minds that no one's ever heard of. He wrote this thing called the Venus Project, where he basically designed the world of tomorrow around nature, and it's pretty cool. Everything's renewable. There is no currency in his world that he made. It's an entire service and barter-based economy and resource-based economy. He called it the resource-based economy, where everything is traded. But the thing is, he didn't even necessarily believe that you needed to do that. You could actually just have a highly centralized and perfectly democratic government that would distribute food and resources equally.
Well, think about it too. If most people were raised to know how to grow their own food and yada, 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 it would be so much like if everybody could generate their own power, grow their own food, you wouldn't have to trade and barter as much.
And that's exactly what he did. It's like everything he designed, down from like how the solar cells down to the transportation, which is all public transportation, all run off of renewable resources. All of the houses are indestructible because they're made of things like hempcrete, which he didn't use hempcrete, but he was talking about renewable resources that could withstand the forces of nature. And you build each of these, what are they called, earth ships, or houses that are made out of sustainable resources and are completely self-sustaining. You design them differently depending on where they are, bringing us back to the point we made in a couple of shows ago, where you would have different types of houses in California that are designed to withstand earthquakes versus flooding in a different area in the south, or hurricanes in the south versus blizzards in the northeast. So he believed that you needed to design, and did many of the designs of these places, and that's how you would do it, is a perfectly adaptable society. That's what I would like to see.
It's a wonderful place to live.
Research the Venus Project with Jacques Fresco. There's hundreds of hours of him talking about his designs. He was also featured in the documentary Zeitgeist Part 1 and 2. That's where I heard about him, and I did all my research. That's what I would like. I don't think it's possible, but it's idealistic, and it's something nice to strive for. I think the best that the United States can aim for in my lifetime is something like Canada. I'm hoping that the best we can get within my daughter's lifetime is something like Scandinavia. That's what I think. And if we can get money out of politics, we might actually be able to get it done.
Yeah. Or, just bust out them goddamn guillotines. Just kidding.
Yeah, right?
We're not actually advocating for anybody to get their head chopped off. Retirement would be nice. If you're a corrupt, rich douchebag, just retire. You're already rich. Go away.
I made the joke on Twitter earlier today, and I'm just going to end with this, and it goes with what you're saying. I don't so much find myself fantasizing about eating the rich as I do thinking that Mitch McConnell probably tastes like veal. I just think he's a veal-looking motherfucker. So specifically, I do think about what Mitch McConnell tastes like, but no, in general, I'm not all about just eating the rich right this very second.
No, yeah.
But he probably is he's probably so tender. that neck meat.
He can just go to Cancun with Ted Cruz's wife, just all.
Yeah, right.
Just hang out.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us, Space Monkeys. Keep fighting the good fight out there. We'll see you later.